Hi, everybody. Captain Lou here with another edition of Tigers Daily in conjunction and partnership with the Fan Arch Network. Happy Saturday, July the 18th, 2026. 16 days to the trade deadline. Welcome to the weekend, everybody. We want to take a moment to welcome those that have subscribed to our YouTube channel. We thank all of you that have done it so far. We've been doing this for about 3 weeks, and the numbers have been fantastic. The interaction has been phenomenal, and from the bottom of my heart, I thank everybody for doing that. And for those of you that haven't, we would love to invite you to subscribe to Tigers Daily. You get all the interaction, all the banter back and forth in the comments. They've been amazing. We try to keep you up to date on everything going on with the world of the Detroit Tigers, the good, the bad, everything in between. The rumors, are they buying or selling? Is AJ Hinch on the hot seat? All of that and a whole lot more. So again, we invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Tigers Daily. All right, again, happy Saturday, everybody. We are in the middle of the road trip, the second game of the West Coast swing for the Tigers against the Anaheim Angels as they look Detroit looking to stay in the pennant race, looking for that playoff spot in the American League, a third straight trip to the playoffs. And with a 44-52 record coming into the All-Star break, I've had some people ask, we've talked about it a little bit earlier in the week, how safe is AJ Hinch with the Detroit Tigers? Now, I know here in the Motor City, in the city of Detroit, in the state of Michigan, a lot of the attention, and Hinch is probably lucky, this has been taken off him with what's going on with the Detroit Red Wings, coincidentally under the same holdings as Chris Ilitch, and he owns them both. So that's kind of taken the heat off a little bit. But now this is what we always say in late July and early August with training camp for the NFL and college football not getting underway for a little bit yet. The spotlight now is directly on the Detroit Tigers here in the state of Michigan. And is this really, is AJ Hinch's job on the line? Let's ask you that. 44-52 at the break, as we mentioned. And underachieving, in my opinion. I know I'm with the camp that he could be doing better with Detroit. Now, obviously, he's the smartest man in the room, and every manager is going to defend all the decisions that they make. I totally understand that. And, I know some folks are going to say that injuries may have played a part. But I don't understand it. I look at the total body of work since last July. Now, and you wonder some of the decisions that were made at call-up time last year. Should they have brought up McConaughey? Should they have brought up Max Clark? Just to give these guys some at-bats. The bats went silent for Detroit. And some of the platooning that A.J. Hinch does is just head-scratching. It's mind-boggling. Now, I know he was a success in Houston. Did he cheat? That's an argument for another day. But my question to you is, and what do you think? Do you think that A.J. Hinch should be fired at the end of the year if Detroit doesn't make the playoffs? Have they underachieved? I don't like how he's handled the bullpen. Why he consistently went to Will Vest in the 8th inning when he was a disaster this year. He is the belief that players will snap out of it. You got to give them opportunities. That's why he hung on to Jahmai Jones for so long in the first half with Detroit. And we all know where Jones is now. He's in Boston. He got traded when he got sent down to the minors. The way he handles the relief pitching. I mean, he insists that every reliever on this roster must be able to go 2 innings. How did that work with Kenley Jansen? Drew Anderson, it doesn't seem to work with. There's only certain people that can go 2 innings in a bullpen. I don't get it. And my biggest beef, and maybe this is just how baseball is played in 2026, is the short leash that he gives the pitching staff, the starters. Now, we talked about it yesterday, or a couple of days ago, yesterday rather, with the minor league system that Detroit has and the amount of the amount of innings that the starters go. Detroit in the minor leagues is averaging right around 5 innings a start. Triple A, double A, single A, low A, whatever you want to call it. And we talked about it kind of ad nauseum yesterday, where I understand it at the low A level and even at the high A level, West Michigan, you're still kind of developing. But these pitchers they're not developed, in my opinion, well enough to get to the major leagues. Detroit's starting pitching right now in the minor leagues is bad. So I get it. But my question is how he handles the pitchers at the major league level. You know, he's only letting them go 5 or 6 innings. Very rarely have the Tigers had a pitcher go 7 innings. I think it's only been a handful of times. You know, the quality start stat, they might as well adjust that in Major League Baseball because it's only going to go to, you know, very rarely now do pitchers go beyond 6 innings. I know that's the quality start threshold. But A.J. Hinch, he saves the pitchers. What are they saving them for? Especially now, Detroit is in a win-now mode. If they're serious about getting to the playoffs and trying to make a run in a very porous American League, I think the spotlight right now is squarely on A.J. Hinch. He's got the pitching staff to keep the Tigers in this race in the American League. The bats are starting to heat up a little bit. Now, yeah, I know the starting pitching staff is what he's got, and this is where I'm going to keep my eye on with him the rest of the year. The bullpen is shaky. Unless the Tigers make a couple of moves, which I've got one that I think the Tigers should make here momentarily. I think it's a good move at the deadline. That I just think that this is A.J. Hinch's. I think his managerial life should be on the line here in Detroit. Now my question is, will Scott Harris pull the trigger? Will he get? Does he have total autonomy from Chris Ilitch? I think that Hinch is underachieved. And again, I know injuries were played a part of it, especially in May. Skubal was out, but you can't tell me they didn't have anybody in the minors to call up. You know, maybe as far as Skubal wasn't the only reason why the Tigers went on that tailspin. The bats were so silent in May. I mean, they weren't giving, you know, I know the relievers blew some of the games, but when you're only averaging 2 to 3 runs, you can't tell me there weren't any sticks in the minor leagues to be brought up. Now, who does that fall on? Is it on Harris? Is it on Hinch? I don't know, but Detroit is in a position right now where they can still make some hay in the month of July and August the way the schedule unfolds. They've got a good chance to start it here with this opening series, and then the rest of the month of July. We've talked about it many times. 16-game stretch where they've only got one team with a winning record, and that's the Chicago Cubs that they're going to be playing. They've got a couple of teams they can hop over with some victories, especially Baltimore. So this is where it's going to fall on Harris. We'll see how well he can motivate the players. I know the players still have to hit. I know the players still have to pitch. I know they still have to field. But this squarely is on him, I believe. If Detroit cannot get back into this race, it's right there for the taking. They're only 3.5 games out of a playoff spot. Now, I know that their depth, you know, as far as hitting goes, isn't the greatest. But maybe this is where they might decide to go after something at the deadline. Who knows? But my question to you is, and I'd love to hear your feedback, is A.J. Hinch, is he on the hook right now? Is there a hot seat for him in Detroit? I know it would be the first time in 3 years they didn't make the playoffs. But when you've got expectations like Detroit had coming into this year with 2 straight playoff appearances, should he have gone to that next level? Is it on him? I'd love to hear what you have to say on this as well. All right, we talked about it briefly. You know, the conversation, depends who you listen to, right? Ken Rosenthal on Fox said that Tarik Skubal is not going to be moved. So they're going to keep him. I don't know if I believe that or not. I don't know if that's right or not. But it got me to thinking, we just talked about how the bullpen is shaky. Now, with the deadline coming up, we mentioned it, 16 days away. One wonders what the Tigers just might do. Now, we've been talking about getting some pop in the bat, looking at other teams, you know, the Brewers, you know, the obvious teams like the Dodgers or the Yankees or whatnot. But Detroit, here's something, we could use a bullpen arm. How much do you trust Finnegan? Will Vest isn't coming back, although he struggled. How much do you trust Summers? Anderson's been good, and he's had a couple of shaky outings. But let's face it, the bullpen has not been very good for the Tigers. The numbers, we went over the numbers a couple of weeks ago. The amount of blown leads that Detroit had, they surpassed last year's blown leads in June. So this is where I think Detroit really needs to shore up. And I was taking a look at some of the teams that might be sellers at the deadline. And a team that Detroit is going to play after the trade deadline, the San Francisco Giants, they're muddling right now in last place. Their season's pretty much over. They're playing in, the most difficult, really, division in baseball when you got the Dodgers comfortably ahead. And then, of course, you've got everybody else ahead of them. But here's a name that I thought of that I think would be a good pickup for the Tigers in relief. How about Eric Miller? He's got 10 holds. He's been pretty good out of the bullpen, considering who he's playing for, that being the Giants. Now, the other one you could maybe take a look at is Keaton Wynn, but I like Eric Miller, and he comes cheap. He's only making $810,000 a year. He's had a pretty decent year for the Tigers. Now, the question is, who are they going to give up? Now, it's funny, as I was watching something the other day about teams and then the players that are on these teams that might need a fresh start. Now, I don't know if Detroit would pull the trigger on this guy, but we've talked about it, and we're going to talk about it in the comments a little bit later on here in the broadcast. Spencer Torkelson could be a name to keep an eye on. Maybe Detroit might move. The only reason I say that is they've got Briseño in AAA ready to make the move. First baseman, outfielder, he's got the stick. Now, this all goes back to partly ego. When do you decide to give up on an overall number one draft pick that's not working? It brings to mind something, and we'll talk about this again a little bit later on. Nick Castellanos a little bit. I know that they're not the same player, and Torkelson's not the head case. He's not the locker room problem. As it turns out, Nick Castellanos was in Detroit and in other places, primarily with the Phillies. But when do you cut bait? That's a question that you got to keep in mind. But I think this would be a good pickup for the Tigers if they're going to be buyers at the deadline. It's starting to lean that way a little bit. But obviously, these next 10 to 13 days are going to be instrumental on what they do if they're going to be buyers or sellers. But if they're going to be buyers and you want someone in the bullpen, specifically in the bullpen, I think this would be a good idea to get somebody like Eric Miller. Now, Torkelson would be an interesting trade bait prospect for this reason. He's on the last year of his contract, then he's arbitration eligible, so he's not tied down to a long-term deal. So that might intrigue some teams like San Francisco, and a change of scenery might do this guy good. But if the Tigers, if they go to try to make a deal with San Francisco and the Giants say we want a prospect instead, maybe they look down the line for a pitcher like Elisalt or potentially Owen Hall, or maybe Ben Jacobs. The youngsters down there, single A and double A. I thought maybe Jaden Ham for the Tigers. Those could be potential prospects. That's just something to keep just something to think about. Chew on that a little bit. We all know the Tigers need help in the bullpen. And if they're in contention come the end of July, this might be a minor move to put him in the bullpen. He's having a decent year in San Francisco. He's not a prospect. He's someone that they could plug in the bullpen right now. And so it's something just to keep an eye on for the Tigers as we get closer to the deadline. Everybody wants to talk about deadline moves. Are the Tigers buyers or sellers? As we've been saying, they're kind of at that cusp. They're right on the edge, teetering on the edge here on July 18th. Game 2 tonight for the Tigers against the Anaheim Angels. 10:07 first pitch. The ace, the two-time defending Cy Young champion, Tarik Skubal, is going to take the hill. We mentioned it a little bit a couple of minutes ago. Ken Rosenthal's reporting that Detroit is not going to be a seller at the deadline when it comes to Tarik Skubal. It sounds like he may stay the rest of the year. Now, we asked this yesterday. How much influence does Scott Boras have in this? We all know the amount of weight he carries. He's the hot shot. He's the superstar agent. His words carry weight. Is that a smart move? We could argue about this till the cows come home. In the comments that we've had, it's pretty much, from the comments that we've had, it's pretty much 80-20, if not more, that Detroit should deal Skubal. But nonetheless, game 2 tonight of the 3-game set in Anaheim. Tarik Skubal is going to be on the bump. He's going to toil for the Tigers. This is a big game for the Tigers. They're all big right now. Not only for A.J. Hinch's security, if you will, to try to keep it going for the Tigers. But again, Skubal pitches well. The price of poker is going to go up a little bit at the deadline should they decide to deal him. And there's so many teams out there. I know they're all lining up to make pitches. One team that we didn't talk about, we haven't talked about, we're going to talk more about it probably tomorrow, will be the Tampa Bay Rays. For a guy, a rental like Skubal, something to keep an eye on. So we talked about it at the top of the broadcast, how ecstatic we are that, you know, the response that we've had here on Tigers Daily. We've been with you now. I think this is our 18th show, something like that. And I just can't thank everybody enough for the viewer comments that we've had here on the show, the participation. Those of you that have checked us out, it makes us just so fired up for this. So we've been talking, and I just want to go over some of the viewer comments. And, you know, here's a question that was brought up the other day. Ricky Kilinsky, he asked, you know, he watches the show, and I thank you, Ricky, for taking time out to watch it. He said, what about Javi Baez? And there's you know, it's almost like he's been forgotten. He was injured at the end of April. He was put on the 60-day DL back in June, I think it was. Well, the latest update I've had on Javi Baez is that he finished his return to gameplay rehab as far as running and hitting and fielding. There still isn't a timetable on his return. It was really vague. He finished that last week before the All-Star break. So I don't know what his timetable is going to be, if he's going to be coming back or not. So if and when. You know, I'd love to see him back. I think if Detroit's going to, obviously you'd like to have him back before September, you know, for the stretch drive in August. But you start thinking about that, you're going to get Gleyber Torres back. It looks like Torres is going to be back, probably next week. Could be the Cubs series. So, I mean, that's something to keep in mind. But, you know, great question on Javi Baez. Honest with looking at the, you know, the injured list, it's almost like he's been the forgotten player for the Tigers. They're still on the hook for him for 2027 for $27 million. You know, his bat came around a little bit towards the end of the, obviously last year he had a better year. And he was doing okay. He was hitting 285 when he got injured. So obviously that would be another weapon for the Tigers if he's healthy. You know, maybe put him in center field. I know he did real well for the Tigers in center field. And then another one was Parker Meadows. Who knows when he's going to come back? And so those are two names that we've kind of forgotten about for the Tigers. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on. I love this with the comments, and there's another player to kind of focus on, and that's Javi Baez. What is his timetable going to be? Now, love the feedback. We've been getting a lot of comments, and I want to thank Ray05E talking about Torkelson, just like and Benjamin Brewer as well. Thanks to him for chiming in on Spencer Torkelson. Again, we ask, when do the Tigers cut bait on an overall first-round draft pick? I know a lot of times it's ego involved in this. When do you decide, well, we tried, it just didn't work out? When do you cut bait on him? That's a great question. So, I mean, I personally would put him as a trade candidate at the deadline. You know, he could be as a seller or a buyer. Detroit's looking to make a move on somebody like a Mason Miller or Eric Miller from San Francisco, like we talked about. I think that would be a good trade. Maybe it's a pipe dream. I don't know if Scott Harris is willing to cut bait with him yet. We'll have to keep an eye on that. And how much does he have the influence as Chris Ilitch? What about him? So many questions on that. Here's an interesting name, and it was brought up the other day as well. Jeff Hindenburg and then Rex, get this right, CBR, both commented on. We had a little banner on this one. Ever think about what about Trevor Bauer? He got all the accusations about him were proven false, and it was false. Everything came out. He was cleared, but he's been blackballed by Major League Baseball right now. What would you think if we had him on the line? I know there's other teams. It's been brought up. Maybe should they be brought? Should they take a flyer on somebody like him? I think he's playing in the Northern Lights League or something like that, some low A ball team or rookie, whatever. But would you take a chance on him? I know he's a head case, and I think he obviously comes with a ton of baggage. I don't think Detroit would do it, but I thought that was a fascinating name. For giving one more opportunity for a team in a pennant drive. I mean, just I thought that very fascinating. Another one that we really haven't thought about. And Paul F5Y6R, he's talking about our reliever core is so bad. Yeah, it is. It's not great. Detroit really doesn't have a true closer. Do you trust Kenley Jensen? I don't. I know he's, especially with the way AJ Hinch handles these guys. The one game that comes to mind when they put him in the 10th inning after pitching the 9th, and I understand he only threw 7 pitches. But the mindset, when Jensen hadn't pitched a 2-inning save opportunity in over a year, and they threw him in. So yeah, that's why I want to go. I was thinking back to Eric Miller from San Francisco, maybe being a trade candidate. And it's not even a superstar buy or sell scenario, if you will. So I think that would be something to keep an eye on as well. I think that would be, again, we talked about a little bit earlier, a good trade piece. And, again, we go back to Ray 05E. How about a new hitting coach? I'll tell you, the way Detroit's going right now may not hurt, right? I know Detroit's bad. I think as a team, 236, 235, they've been right around there, which, 20, 30, 40 years ago, that'd be the bottom. Now it's not the middle of the pack, but it's, it's not the worst. So it's crazy. And then the other one, we talked about this earlier in the week. And, chiming in, Virgil Green, 3108. See if I get this right. D.I. Knoxing, 9889. John G. Wads, 8456. And then Jamie Q7D. All chiming in. We talked about this about the national broadcast. Now, especially the home run derby. It really touched a nerve to me earlier in the week. And same with these guys. And I think we're all in agreement. We love the game of baseball. We want to watch it. We want to have the ability to watch it. Now, I know some of you probably have to already subscribe to ESPN if you don't live in Michigan, or if you don't have Comcast, you don't have the opportunity to watch it on that specific channel. And then, so that's enough to me. Now, we've got Prime Video gets games, Apple TV gets games, and then Netflix getting that home run derby. You want to keep the young fans because, they're going to be taken over. Now, obviously, I don't know the ages of you guys, and that's fine. But I know for someone like me that has watched the games for 55 years, and to make it more difficult to watch, I didn't watch the home run derby. I didn't want to take the time to have to find it on Netflix. I know it's not super hard, but especially when there's multiple games that you might want to watch, and you don't have the ability to switch the channels. They don't make it any easier on you. And then, of course, some of you don't have Netflix, so that means you're going to have to pay a subscription rate to watch it. Or some of you don't have, I don't have Apple TV Plus. I've got Prime Video, but the point here is you shouldn't have to make anybody take a lot of time to watch your game. You shouldn't have to make it harder to watch. But I'm telling you, the way it's going, don't be surprised, especially after the CBA comes up, that there's, if the owner's got to make any kind of compromise, I guarantee you they're going to go to where they can make some more money to recoup some of their so-called losses. And that's by going to more pay TV route. More games. The NBA would put playoff games on Prime Video. Don't be surprised if MLB does that too, and that's just going to alienate more fans. The more harder you make it, and the more you make the average fan pay, it's just going to be more and more detrimental. I think we all know that. So, all right. I want to again thank all the viewer comments that we've had, and this has been so much fun. I'm having an absolute blast with this. I hope you're enjoying it, by the way, and we'll touch on all the comments from here on out. We'll make sure to answer as many questions as we can. So, I appreciate it. And for those of you that have signed in for the first time, I appreciate that as well. We really enjoy it, and I'm hope you're enjoying the product as well. And hey, I'll take the criticism too. You always got to take the good with the bad. That's what we say on here anyways. We give you the Tiger updates, the good and the bad, and everything in between. All right, that's going to about do it. Until next time. Or first of all, again, I want to ask you, again, for those of you that are not subscribed to the channel, just hit the subscribe button. We really appreciate it. It helps us. And again, I appreciate your feedback. Taking time out to watch us here on Tigers Daily. However, you're watching us around the world here on Tigers Daily. We partner up with the Fan Arch Network. All right, until next time, Captain Lou saying keep your heads up, keep your sticks down, keep your feet moving, and as always, keep your minds open. So long.